So, hey, everybody, I'm here with Lisa Umberger. I've known her for a couple of years now through my relationship with Squadra Ventures. And Lisa is the founder and CEO of Sicura. I've seen her on stage present the information about her solution. She'll talk some about that today. So, Lisa, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it. You're as busy as anybody. So, I always like to start these with sort of the silly question. We'll get this one out of the way, and maybe we'll use it, maybe we won't. But growing up, was there a crappy job you ever had? Did you have a job where you went, it wasn't great, but I learned something from it? Bagging groceries, cutting lawns, babysitting. I don't know, right? I always wondered.
I had the same job pretty much all through high school and college, and I learned a ton there. But it was actually at a animal hospital. I had wanted to potentially be a veterinarian, and so I had started as a vet tech and spent just about 8 years at the clinic that I was at. And I don't know, I learned a lot. I loved it. So not really,
Wasn't a bad job. It was an interesting job.
No,
right?
it was a great job. Yeah, I definitely learned a lot from it. Collected a few more animals during that time than I probably otherwise would have.
Of course, a rescue here and there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, that was my main job.
Yeah, well, that's it. And then you kind of went right into cyber, I think. What was your first job in cybersecurity that you can talk about?
Yeah. Well, so I went to the University of Baltimore, where I studied actually forensic science, and I started as a contractor supporting the National Security Agency right out of college, and spent the next 12 years there working on cyber.
You and I share that. It's I got captured before. In my case, I was still in high school. And
Yeah.
We're going to let me go. But it worked out well. That's interesting. So forensic science, and that really plays well into what you're doing now with your solution. We'll talk about that in just a bit. So I ask this too of a lot of founders is what inspired you to sort of go do something, right? To do this? What inspired you to actually start your own thing or build your own product?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I was really passionate about the space, like security and compliance policy, and how that can really be like practically applied to managing, systems or infrastructure. And even just saying that out loud right now, it sounds such a nerdy thing to be passionate about. But I really felt very passionate about it, and supporting the agency, which is where we originally developed this technology to solve a problem. And that problem was, at that time I had my own cybersecurity team there, and we were doing kind of the first part of the accreditation process. And so if anybody's ever worked for the federal government and had to go through this, they have a, accreditation and authorization process, basically taking, your technology from development and putting it into production, really saying, yes, it's ready to go, it's secure. And so what we were finding is, we would get these systems, these technologies from the developers, and they would say, yeah, they're hardened. I used a hardening guide. Some of them were, still on paper guides, or they just had, giant spreadsheets they were trying to work from. And we would get them, and of course, my team would test them because we need to, verify and validate that all of the hardening was done properly. And we would get results back from the scans, and the scan results were less than stellar. And so, what my team would then do is kind of take those scan results and give them back to the developers and say, you need to go fix all this stuff. Well, and of course, if you've seen scan results before, there's a million false positives, pages of information. It's not necessarily even clear what you're supposed to fix or how. And so, round and round it would go. They would give it back to us. We would scan it, and it was just taking forever to get through accreditation process. And so we're like, there's got to be a better way to do this, and so really what we did was, that better way of doing it was through automation, really putting kind of policy first, but how does that policy line up with, specific security settings on these systems, and how can we automate as much as humanly possible? And so what inspired me, we created the solution and solved the problem. And really what we thought is, if we're having this problem here, that means, probably other federal agencies are having this problem, probably widespread within, the DoD, other civilian agencies, but really any highly regulated, large enterprise. So start thinking about, banks, financial institutions, healthcare, for example. These are folks that all have to follow specific policies and guidelines that are laid out when it comes to cybersecurity. And so if we're having this problem, we know everybody else is having this problem. And again, like, why reinvent the wheel? Let's get this out there and help as many people as we can.
Yeah, I mean, it solved it once. Well, why can't I solve this many times? If we can apply this automation here at this one division within NSA, can I do it at every division and then maybe over at CIA or any other DoD agency? So,
yeah, we were open sourced by the NSA. They allowed us to open source the technology in 2015. And so that really enabled us to get the technology out there and get it in front of other agencies and other partners and into industry as well.
yeah. And again, I've been through that CNA process, right? And I did the first one ever at CIA when DC 116 first came out. And what a pain, right? It's the system has to be configured this specific way. Well, it is for all of 30 seconds.
Right.
Right. Oh, then somebody put an update on it. Okay, well, now it's no longer. So this is where the automation comes in, I'm sure. Why is your solution important to a market that has 4,700 vendors in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, for us, we're really the now what. So there's a ton of cybersecurity tools out there that give you information, lots of information. We talked earlier about, vulnerability scanners, configuration scanners, and, you get scores and you get, green lights or red lights. You get lots of information. But what we do is take it the step further. It's like, okay, I have all this information, but now what do I do with it? And the answer to the now what there is really Sicura. So Sicura, what you do is you remediate your findings, right, automatically using Sicura.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, sets us apart because we're actually taking, active approach to doing the configuration management.
That is such a great statement too, is okay, I did the scan. Now what? I don't even know what to do with it. It told me some things are broken or not right. Where
Right.
there, which was why I guess that accreditation process just went in circles, is you throw it back to the developers, you go, we're not security people, but it's not our thing. You told us to configure this desktop or this laptop or this server a particular way. We don't know how to do that really. It's not our thing.
And I'm sure you've experienced too, right? The developers and the system administrators, they don't necessarily speak the same language that the security folks are speaking. And so we really at Sicura bridge that gap. And it sounds a little crazy, but we want that common language to be compliance. And compliance, you say that sometimes to a system administrator or a developer, and they'll groan. But the nice thing about compliance is, it's defined, it's repeatable, and you can automate it. And so once you go through that with them, they're on board. And now we have a common language, common framework to speak from.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know security people tend to groan at compliance. They think it's a checkbox mentality. But when you're doing something like configuring a device or a server or some software, it needs to be specifically and consistently configured that way. The whole point of having standards, right? So I guess that part of what you all have to do is continually monitor standards that change. Is what do the STIGs say, right? And those sorts of things is, well, we got to configure this to that particular standard for this agency. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So here's a question though. I guess some of this goes to the sort of the go-to-market strategy with 4,700 plus companies in this space. How do you break through the noise, right? What is the method that you have found that maybe it's, well, once a customer tries it, they're sold on it, or, a demo is the thing we need, whatever it is that is sort of break through the noise for you?
I think for us, it's being so niche. So we very much focus on secure configuration.
Right.
And, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to be, your full stop, stop shop for all of your cyber needs. We're
Right.
experts. We're very specifically experts at turning policy, into configuration items and secure settings. And so, having that niche and focusing on being the experts and the best that we can be at that and having our product be the best at that, I think really sets us apart. We're not trying to do everything at once and be everything to everybody. So,
I talked to another founder this week on an interview, and he focuses in really the services space, not quite an MSSP, but they do some monitoring. And I asked him the same question. He said almost the same answer as you. We do a few things really well. We've stayed in a lane. We don't get outside our lane. This is what we do, and we don't tell anybody we do anything other than that. And that's why he keeps getting repeat business. So I was thinking, with the space that you're in, what is the sort of the benefit, I guess? Hey, if I implement your automation, what's the benefit to me as the CISO and my team of security people? And I think I know the answer, but
yeah, I mean, so I would start with saying customization. So every organization, and even within organizations, you have your STIGs or you have your benchmarks or your CIS controls, but they're uniquely implemented everywhere. And the ability to be able to customize your policies, right, that meet your organization's requirements, really provides a huge benefit. And really, it's the life cycle, I think, of infrastructure. So if you think of, like we talked about earlier, kind of policy first. So being able to define and customize your policy, and then have that policy then go to your engineering team where they can build infrastructure directly from the policy that your CISO or your security team has defined, that goes a long way. You can sleep a little better at night knowing, right, that your infrastructure is secured in the way that it's required to be or the way that your organization needs it to be. So it really closes the loop there.
yeah, and I want to make sure I understand that is, while out of the box, I'm sure you have some configuration to go, if you want this, we can do that immediately. But for your environment, if you want to open these things up, we can configure that becomes your baseline. Is
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that is good. Whereas sometimes things are out of the box. It's, well, this is the way it's going to be. It's configured this way, whether you want it to or not. That's what we call configuration.
A good example of that would be, if you go on, let's say, Amazon Marketplace and download some hardened images. So they're pre-hardened images. The problem is that they have every single benchmark, for that, and so it's all already implemented. And just in reality and how organizations work, it's just, it's very unlikely, unless you're just in a kind of standalone dev box, that you're going to implement, right, everything. And so being able to, and it really depends on their cyber maturity too, right? So for new folks starting out, maybe they're not comfortable, getting to 100%, right? And it's very rare, again, that anybody gets to 100%, but that's okay. You can start with, let's implement, auditing benchmarks, right? And after we're good with that, let's go ahead and test out, password requirements or keys. So there's being able to step into it, I think, in a customized way, is really valuable for organizations that are mature or that are just starting out.
Yeah. So I had to think one of the other benefits of implementing your automation would be just the efficiency. There's got to be some efficiency gained for a CISO who has a small team who's scanning and getting gazillions of results and can't figure out what to do next. Is that something that you found with your clients?
Absolutely. So I think from the security side, really having all of that kind of tied together. So being able to, again, we ingest scan results. We don't build our own scanner. There's plenty of great scanners out there, but we can ingest those results and then give you information on what actually needs to be remediated or what your scores are at when it comes to checking your configurations against a specific standard. And so being able to, again, and you can automate all of that. How often do you want to scan? You can also set up your own policies to scan against. So if you're very, focused specifically on one area, you can do that. I think where we really see efficiency gained is really also on the engineering side. So the engineering team really loves Sicura because it automates away so much of this for them. And, they're already having to build infrastructure. They're already having to, get requirements, not just from security, but they're getting requirements from, their app developers that need a platform set up a certain way, et cetera. And so if they can start secure from the beginning for what their CISOs and their security team wants them to do, and then build from there, it just saves them so much time. And then they're really able to focus on, again, business goals, mission goals, rather than constantly worrying about security and compliance from that standpoint.
So I can see the relationship there between the CISO using your solution as sort of the governance component of it. I can see this, I can see what you're doing, but the engineering team be the more the users of it saying, we're using this to configure all of these servers and so forth. And I like that combination.
Yeah.
So this leads me to a question about a case study, right? So I know you can't mention clients, and you shouldn't, but is there a case in your head where you go, there's an example where we proved this out with a client and they gained some efficiencies and life got better and they had a drastic improvement in something?
One of our customers is a cloud provider, and all of the users of the cloud resources all have kind of different security requirements and different compliance requirements. And so what it allows this cloud provider to do is they use Sicura to define the policy for each of those organizations. So they're able to then really efficiently manage multiple customers that are on their platform and be able to customize the infrastructure from a security standpoint specifically for those organizations. And so for them, they're able to, again, automate all of that away and prove to their customers that the infrastructure is secured at how the customers requested it. And so what that really did, so that specific company at the time had 8 people originally managing all of these different security requirements and compliance requirements coming in from their customers. And after using Sicura, that went down to 2 people from those 8 people. And those, 6 people were then able to be kind of reassigned to work on business and mission goals rather than trying to just stay on top of policy and, changing tides. So really, from an efficiency standpoint, they're, automated away, allowed them to meet their customer demand and allowed them to really focus more on their business goals.
Yeah, no, that's a great case study, right? Where they got more efficient. They were a multi-tenant client. Mm-hmm. Yeah, different configurations for each one of them. That would be a nightmare to try to manage through spreadsheets, right? So 8 people managed that down to 2. Yeah, that is a great case study. Well, you knew AI was going to have to come up in the conversation at some point. And I've asked every one of the founders I've talked to, where is AI in your world? Is it just a thing that's going to make it worse for you because the attackers are using AI? Or is it AI will benefit our product? We can do more with our product. So where are you in that spectrum?
Yeah, we're definitely, AI definitely benefits our product, and we can definitely do a lot more. So as you mentioned, policy is always changing. There's new standards coming out. There's new operating systems being released that now have, new guides, new security guides against those. And so being able to use AI essentially to track and keep track of all of those changes and then automatically update our policies that we have saves us a ton of time. And the other way really is kind of AI, like machine learning. So we're really looking at implementing the ability to use AI to actually do the mapping. So for specific benchmarks and policies, like how do they specifically map to system security settings? So if I have a new Red Hat variant that's come out, and there's a number of changes, I can use AI to then find those changes and then map any policy directly to those new changes, so that our policies constantly stay updated.
Yeah, that's a great use of it, I think, right? There comes a new variant of a particular operating system that we typically automate. All right, well, what does that change mean to our policy? How does that affect it?
Exactly. Yep.
Interesting. That's a good use of AI. Yeah, I think. I was just saying to somebody the other day, even my wife's using AI a little bit now. She had to write a survey for a client and she's like, wonder if ChatGPT could help me. And I was like, it all depends on your query. Make the query smart and you'll get the results you want. And she did. So
yeah, absolutely.
So our last question is a fun piece here. It's, you're going to give some advice to a startup, right? In the cybersecurity space, someone who's done what you've done. Some people say, run away from it. or dig your heels in. But what would be your advice to someone who wants to get into the cybersecurity space?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say is really make sure you develop a unique value proposition.
Mhm.
You have to be bringing something new to the market, solving a problem. Make sure you really can show the real world value and impact that your product would be able to have. Aside from that, I think I would say always be an expert, in what you do in your field.
Yeah.
So, I'm constantly staying on top of, again, compliance changes, policy changes, where things are moving, um, accreditation wise, what are the latest headaches, right, for people going through accreditation, and how can we help solve those? So always be an expert. And the last thing I would say is really, what's really gotten us to where we're at now is focusing on customer experience.
Mm.
It's such a huge thing. And so, always focus on whatever you build, make sure you're focusing on, how is the customer experience going to be for these people?
Those are three great pieces of advice. And similar to what I hear from most of the founders, almost every single one says unique value proposition. Again, 4,700 products in the space. Why would they even need to look at you, right? If you're just doing the exact same thing as somebody else with a tiny twist on it, probably not going to break through the market. So, I mean, what you automated is something that everybody needs. So very interesting. Well, this has been great for me. I'm so excited about what you do. I'm glad that you've been in front of our audiences several times. Our members have seen you present and your business partner as well. I think you guys do a great job. So thank you for this time.
All right. Thank you so much, Bill.